Welcome in everybody to Betting Pros. It's time to place your bets. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and this is BP NFL. It's time for the Super Bowl. That's right. It's time to look ahead with the Undertaker, Andrew Erickson, and myself to the big game. Not this Sunday, but next Sunday. So we've got a lot of time. So this is kind of like the first notions, the first feels, the little bit of research here already digging into the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, a rematch from a couple years ago, and Andrew Erickson won on paper that looks like, I think, a very good game. I know a lot of Americans here and even some international folks are very annoyed at this Super Bowl. I am not. This is good. This is two of the best teams in the NFL going at it. There's some heat there because they went at it a couple years ago. I like running it back. It's like Ali and Frazier, it's like those old school boxing matches where you get the contender, can he finally beat the champs? And the Chiefs are the reigning defending champions. They've been in 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls. So I get it, football fans. There's Chiefs fatigue. I understand this. But at the same time, there's also a great narrative of can you slay the beast going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. So before we dive into the game, the numbers, everything here, Andrew Erickson, there's also a lot of history going on here with this game. Andy Reid is now the 6th Super Bowl appearance for him, tying Don Shula for the second most behind only Bill Belichick, who has 9. Mahomes ties Elway with the second most Super Bowl appearances, 5 as a starting quarterback for one team there in a row. And look, you've got, I shouldn't say in a row, for 5 times as a starting quarterback, the second most with John Elway, the first obviously Tom Brady. And then you've got Patrick Mahomes here also looking to do something with this team that's never been done, a three-peat in the NFL. How much do you think that history is really weighing on the Chiefs? Because if you go back to last year, right after that game, that's all they were talking about. Three-peat. It seems like they had it in their mind, and now they've gotten back there, which I think is incredibly impressive.
I mean, I think that you could make the argument that this is one of the best Chiefs teams that they've ever had. And I get it from when you're looking at, oh, well, they haven't really blown teams out. All they do is win close games. But if they beat the Eagles, they lost one game all year with their starting offense. One game. There really hasn't been that many teams that have gone and run the table essentially and lost only one game. There's been a couple teams that have gone 18-1, like we've seen the Carolina Panthers were a team that won 18-1, lost the Super Bowl. The undefeated Patriots, they went 18-1, lost the Super Bowl. But I mean, yes, they added an extra game, but this team is going to finish 19-2. Is that going to be their final record, or 18-2? So yeah, I mean, I am very much looking forward to this game. I think that even on the Eagles side, I mean, this team has been to 3 Super Bowls in the last 10 years. So It's not like they're inexperienced. They've been in the big game before. And one thing to point out about this Chiefs team, there are still players on this Chiefs team that haven't won Super Bowls. So yes, a lot of them have been there, done that, but Xavier Worthy, he's a rookie wide receiver. He's never won a Super Bowl. Kareem Hunt, he's never been part of these Chiefs teams, or at least I can't remember actually. Was he on any of the teams that won the Super Bowl? I'd have to double check.
Look if he was on the one that lost
to the Buccaneers.
To Brady years too. I'm trying to go back in my mind. I have to go back and track that.
Yeah, I'll have to.
But let's not forget Carson Wentz too. We got to put him in the mix, right? With Carson Wentz, right? Wentz. But DeAndre Hopkins, another player too, that we're looking for. Getting that ring, which has not happened in his career, and he's been a veteran, one of the great players in the league, and this is that last bit for him. So there's a lot at stake here for a lot of the Kansas City Chiefs, as Andrew's saying, that haven't tasted the glory of the Lombardi Trophy quite yet. And we're gonna dive into the spread, the total, the money line, everything here, and it is very close. Before we do, just a quick shout out too. This is the time of year where you can get your voice heard, so help share and shape the Betting Pros podcast. Take a quick survey right now at bettingpros.com/survey. I finally said it right. It's the first time all week I said it right. bettingpros.com/survey. I end up sounding like Sean Connery because I just shush everything together. And you can share your feedback to help us improve. What do you want to hear more of? What do you want to hear less of? I hope more Royal Rumble takes and more WWE stuff, because we did that podcast yesterday. If you missed it, we went through the whole Royal Rumble with all the betting stuff there. So if you missed it, go back and watch it or listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. But again, all it takes is a minute, maybe 2. bettingpros.com/survey. Go have your voice heard. Okay, here we go. The tail of the tape for the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. Right now on bettingpros.com, the consensus best line, you're getting -1.5 at -103 for the Kansas City Chiefs, +1.5 at -105 at BetMGM for the Philadelphia Eagles. 49.5 is the total. It's varying in some different spots there. Kansas City on the money line, minus 119, plus 110 over on DK is where you're getting the Eagles' best number currently. And of course, you can always set the custom line alerts when you download the BettingPros app. That way you can stay on top of any line movement, because a little half a point here, a little section here, just a little bit of movement here, that does make a big impact, because this is a very, I think, razor thin margin. So I feel like the framing of this game is very simple, Andrew, which is the more talented team on paper in terms of athleticism, in terms of playmakers, in terms of kind of what it looks like, the Philadelphia Eagles. They're younger, faster, I think stronger in some regards, but also just looking at the talent up and down that roster and what they've been able to do with that talent. I don't think anybody would disagree. The Eagles are a more talented team. The thing I always say to my teams that I coach, the best team doesn't always win. The team that plays the best wins. And I feel like that's what we're always looking at Patrick Mahomes. When it comes down to these drives at the last minute of these games or two, it's always Patrick Mahomes who seems to find a way to make the drive, to make this work. And you probably went poor betting against the Chiefs over the last 6 years. So where do you stand right now when you're looking at these numbers here? It is very close, only a point really. It's basically a pick 'em. What side are you on at first glance?
I'm on the Chiefs. And I had to look back at some of the futures bets I made, and I don't think it was a coincidence or by mistake that I bet specifically the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl as I was building our futures portfolio, and I bet the Eagles to win the NFC. Like
Nice.
I kind of stopped myself going one more step forward with the Eagles, because I knew when push comes to shove, I'm going to be taking the Chiefs in the final game, and that's kind of where I settle here, because yes, they may have the better team overall on paper, but I think this was the exact conversation we had when they played the Eagles 2 years ago. And it was a different Eagles team overall, but still top to bottom. I think that Eagles team was, I believe the Chiefs were underdogs in that particular game. I believe the Eagles were favored. So for me, it's just going back to, I don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes. And as weird as this sounds, I talked about how this might be one of the best Chiefs teams that they've actually ever had. The Chiefs offense has been cooking over the last month or so. We're seeing Patrick Mahomes is putting up season highs in EPA per dropback. So it really seems like, yeah, we did save the best for last. And we're finally starting to see the ultimate, what the Chiefs were just trying to get to. Like you said, after last year's Super Bowl, they were already thinking about how can we three-peat, and kind of having this slow burn all year long where they never really hit their stride during the regular season. But then once the playoffs started to come around, this is when they finally started to kick it into gear. And you're starting to see guys really pop off here and there. So, yeah, I think that this is going to be a tough task for the Eagles. I will say that the one wrinkle and storyline that I really like is for the Eagles to win this game, it's because of their running back. And I can only imagine how every single running back that's been disrespected, underpaid, underappreciated is, let's go Saquon Barkley. Like, they are going to be rooting so hard for him to be a monster. Because what's the last time we had a running back probably be I haven't looked at the MVP odds, but I have to imagine Barkley's probably up there, right, with Hurts and Mahomes. As I wouldn't even be surprised if has better odds than Jalen Hurts to win the MVP, because I just think that there's no way where he doesn't have a monster game.
Patrick Mahomes is plus 110, Saquon Barkley plus 280, Jalen Hurts plus 370. And I get that. I going back 2 years ago, that Eagles team, terrific defense. That was a team that got after the quarterback at an enormous rate, right? And I think that what you're seeing now is the big difference is obviously Saquon Barkley. You're also seeing a younger group too, some new corners too, who have been really good, two rookie corners in Cooper DeJean and Quinny Mitchell, who have been spectacular this year. Jalen Carter is not the guy who was on that team a couple years ago. So this is an influx of players, and a lot of defensive players, ironically enough, from those Georgia championship teams that have winning in their DNA. So I do think that's important. And I have a lot of respect for the Eagles. I'm not trying to disrespect the Eagles here at all. And I don't think Andrew is either, nor are we disrespecting Saquon Barkley. It's just, I think when you look at the end of the day, do you think it's a close game? And if you think it's a close game, am I going to put the ball in the hands of Patrick Mahomes and be confident, or the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands and be confident? And Jalen Hurts has played very well, but I've also seen the Eagles in this playoffs sputter a little bit against the Green Bay Packers. Let's be honest. At times, I know the elements were a big factor against the Rams. They didn't look all that sharp all the time, but yes, okay, it was snowing, elements, whatever. First half of that game against the Commanders was tight until it wasn't, and then they blew the doors off the Commanders. So it's great that they have this confidence going in, but I think that that final half and that final score is giving people maybe on the Philadelphia side just a little bit of an inflated version of confidence. Do you agree with that notion?
I think so. I mean, the Eagles, again, we weren't even sure that we're going to host the NFC Championship game because it took the Commanders beating the Lions for them to be able to host that game. So it would have been interesting to see how they would have stacked up against the Detroit Lions playing on the road, in a hypothetical and the NFC Championship game. But I think something else to point out too is the Vic Fangio thing, right? His defense, and I know that you sent me a post on social media earlier today talking about how Patrick Mahomes has faced Vic Fangio defenses 8 times over the last 5 years, I believe, because Fangio was the head coach of the Broncos and also was the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins in 2023. He's 8-0 against Vic Fangio and their defenses, 7-1 against the spread. It's only one time a Vic Fangio defense has covered against the Kansas City Chiefs, and 6-2 towards the under in those particular games. So I know we haven't gotten to the total yet, but just kind of like a nugget to throw in there. And interesting enough, when I was looking back at Fangio after he was relieved of his Broncos head coaching duties, he signed on with the Eagles as a consultant for that Super Bowl against the Chiefs. It did not help because they gave up 38 points. So interested to see. I mean, you have to give the edge to Mahomes and Reed. They've seen Fangio and his defense. And again, personnel is obviously different, but schematically, Fangio's going to have to throw some type of curveball at Mahomes and Andy Reid. And so far, that usually doesn't work. Like, they are usually ahead of the game with extra time to prepare. So again, I think this offense is going to be effective, like we talked about earlier. And yes, they have the talent, but when push comes to shove, Mahomes finds a way. And if he gets the ball at the end of the game, like, I feel confident that he's going to drive down and get the game-winning field goal. And I do think this game is going to be close, though. And that's why I don't understand the perception of, I don't want this matchup. All the Chiefs do is play in close games. That's fun to watch.
Yeah, they don't blow anybody out.
Exactly.
That's not where they've been at all season.
So it'll be a close game. I think that makes it fun. But ultimately, I think that Chiefs, they come out on top again.
The failure last year of Kyle Shanahan in that Super Bowl was not continuing to just pound the rock with Christian McCaffrey and suck up clock. And instead, he was, trying to be fancy Kyle Shanahan. Look at all these plays I designed. They're so much fun. And just play boring football a little bit sometimes. And he had the opportunity to do that. I get the feeling that if Sirianni has the chance to play boring football with Saquon Barkley, he's going to take it. And that is why I think the Eagles have an absolute shot here. If you're looking for value on the betting side, the value on the betting side is to take the Eagles to win on the money line and Saquon Barkley to be MVP. Because I do think it would be Saquon in that instance. It would be a transcendent moment in time. And we've seen that in the Super Bowl in the past. Like, you go back to the Marcus Allen days, you go back to John Riggins, unfortunately, you got to go back to the 80s for a lot of these moments. But even in the 90s, the Terrell Davis moments and things like that, like there's been guys there that sometime it's that running back in that moment in that season. And that's what Saquon has been. And I think that if you're looking for value on the betting side, it's clearly on that. It's clearly on taking the Eagles to just find a way. Mahomes finally, after all these years, just coming up short. But I don't think it's Hurts. I think it's Barkley in that script we're writing who ends up winning the MVP of the Super Bowl. Would you agree with that notion that if you're going to go counter here, looking for value, that is the path?
I think so, because I think that the narrative about Hurts just this year in general, where I think that the public he's been underwhelming. He hasn't been as good. The offense is about Saquon Barkley. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what the market's telling us. So I think that, yes, if you like the Eagles side here, betting Saquon Barkley to win MVP is probably the best bang for your buck, because I find it very hard to believe that we'll see a game where the Eagles come away with the upset. I'm going to say close spread, but if they win this game, I think it's going to be because Saquon Barkley is ripping off 60-yard touchdowns and the defense plays well. So that doesn't necessarily lean into Hurts winning MVP.
And Mahomes took 36 sacks. That's the most in his career this season. And was sacked 5 more times in the playoffs. So if you are looking for the opportunity there again, when you're looking at, can you create turnovers? Can you get to Patrick Mahomes? The answer is yes. You can this year. So it's something you got to be very careful of. I also think it's very important in that last game against Buffalo too, when you saw Mahomes running out in space and getting out there making plays, that he is confident doing that and healthy enough to do that. That was something, in the past with some of those ankle injuries, he wasn't quite 100% there. We can roll our eyes about it, but look,
no, once he has the ankle injury, he's on. Like, it's like,
that's,
all right.
That's when the switch flips. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
All right. So if right now, both of us are looking at this. If it's basically a pick 'em, we're just going to go straight to the money line. That's what I'm doing. And I got to pay a little bit more juice for the Chiefs, but I'm willing to do it. Let's talk about the total, which is 49, 49 and a half in some other spots here. So sometimes in these games, you get that, everybody's just very nervy and jumpy. But for the most part, these are coaches that have been there before, staffs that, some of them at least that have been here many times, especially on the Chiefs side. Players in terms that have been here before, a lot of Eagles, not all the Eagles, but a lot of Chiefs. Do you expect this to be a sluggish first quarter? Because if it's not, then I think you have a shot for this over potentially. But I feel like maybe it's where experience comes in for these two teams, where perhaps that over is achievable, because we all know, it's just that pomp and circumstance. They're all standing on the field forever, and they're nervy, they're jumpy, they come out a little flat here. They haven't played football in 2 weeks. I don't know if we're going to get that from these two teams necessarily. Do you?
I don't think that they come out flat. I like again, as we're diving into some of these more exotic markets, first quarter over, the total's at 9.5 points. In the 4 Super Bowls that the Chiefs have played in, the over has gone in 3 of 1, right? So 3 times they've gone over at least 10 points. So I do like the first quarter over, because what do we see? Saquon Barkley is ready to rip off a 70-yard touchdown at any point during the game. So the Chiefs have to be ready for that. We've seen the Eagles kind of turn things around in the second half of the year, where at the beginning of the season, the offense was very sluggish. We were betting a lot of like first half unders for the Philadelphia Eagles, or like bet the Eagles on the money line after they fall behind because they never score in the first quarter. That's kind of changed in the second half. And then, as we've talked about before already, with the Chiefs offense is really starting to cook over the last month, basically since, Mahomes hurt his ankle. We've seen that the offense is much more. So I think that both offenses come out more aggressive. So I do like the over in, the first quarter. But the overall game total, though, I am leaning towards the under overall.
So you think it starts off hot and then gets tight?
Yes, and then I think it gets a little bit tighter after that as these teams kind of feel each other out. Already mentioned it about Fangio when these games have played out in the past. It's 6-2 towards the under. So a lot of those games, even against the Fangio defense, when the Chiefs have won and covered, they haven't been, the Chiefs put up 30 points. Like, they have been more lower scoring games. So again, personnel is always going to take a consideration here. It's not the same teams, but just based on the expectation heading into the game, those games underwhelmed. And I think that there's a really fun example to point out here, where we've actually seen Mahomes face a Vic Fangio defense in a neutral field before. Last year, when they played the Miami Dolphins, they actually played in Germany. It was a neutral field. The total was 51.5 points, and the spread was 1.5 towards the Chiefs. So pretty similar circumstances to this Super Bowl. Again, a neutral field, similar spread, similar total. And that game went way under. Like, that game was very disappointing. Now, again, a little bit different playing in Germany versus playing in the Super Bowl. But I think that ultimately, I think this game is more in the low 20s, mid 20s overall versus high 20s, low 30s, where you're getting over 50 points. So I think it's going to be close. I don't like betting on the total per se, but I think that we're going to probably finish more around 48, 47 and not get to 49.5.
Two players, one on each side I want to talk about too, because the Kansas City Chiefs have struggled against tight ends. Dallas Goedert could be one of these guys potentially that, might pop off in this game if they do get into situations where they're forced to throw the football. And then Xavier Worthy, who's been red hot here towards the end, is starting to look like the favorite child here. And he is a problem. He has incredible speed. They use him in all those jet sweeps and different ways to get him the football. So, of course, there's a lot of clever play design that's always going on there for the Chiefs. Do you think there's another X factor of a player or two? We talk about the Mahomes and the Barkleys and all those guys, but, when you start digging into some of the secondary players, or somebody else that could be an X factor in this game besides those two?
So I do want to hit on those guys first, because I think that they're important to highlight. I think Xavier Worthy is set up for another monster game. He's in the Rashee Rice role, and we saw this last year. It just continued to build week after week after week. And again, going back to that Miami Dolphins Fangio matchup that we saw last year in the playoffs with Kansas City, who had the monster game, it was Rashee Rice. So they've already seen this role take apart this defense before. And it's actually interesting. Xavier Worthy is 12-1 to score the first touchdown. Who scored the first touchdown in both of the Fangio matchups in 2023? Rashee Rice did. So that's kind of the market I'm looking at when it comes to, because again, you got to bet the first touchdown. It's a lot of fun for the Super Bowl. So I like Xavier Worthy at 12-1. Dallas Goedert is interesting. I know that his prop for receiving yards has been the most bet prop since the market's open, which is really fun. It's like, do you chase the steam? The value's probably all gone, but it doesn't matter if he hits it anyway. But he hasn't had over 5 catches in 5 of the last 6 games, and he's only done it against the Commanders. So when Devontae Smith and AJ Brown are healthy, Dallas Goedert tends to not get over 5 receptions. So I kind of like playing contrarian here with Goedert, where I like the under on his receptions, which you can get at plus money at some books, and kind of staying away from the yardage, because what he's been doing is really taking advantage of yards after the catch. That's how he's been putting up a lot of his yardage. So I'm just looking at it from a volume perspective, where we know the Eagles like to run the football. I don't necessarily think that this is going to be a 35 pass attempts game for Jalen Hurts. That's taking them way out of their script. So I kind of like
that's a bad script for the Eagles if it becomes that script.
Exactly. I think that's advantage on the Chiefs side of things. So I like taking the under on Dallas Goedert and the receptions. When it comes to another X factor, I think we're probably going to see one of these other Chiefs receivers pop off, whether it's a Hopkins or a Marquise Hollywood Brown, who they're using a lot downfield. Hopkins to me seems like this guy, he's scoring a red zone touchdown. Like to me, because that's the only role he has left, right? They're not using him a lot. Juju's kind of playing more of the snaps, but I mean, if they see DeAndre Hopkins man-to-man coverage against one of these rookies, like, how are they not going to just throw him up a ball? And I'm confident the dude's going to come down with one, because he's an alpha. Yes, his role has been minimalized in this particular offense, but he wants a ring. And I think that
he's
can
far down that trough too, plus 600 for an anytime.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty long shot for a guy that the only time he comes in is in the red zone. Like, it's very clear what his role, his new role is in this offense. So when we're talking anytime touchdowns, I think Hopkins could probably come up big here. And yeah, he's probably my bet on like which random guy scores a touchdown. I think it'd probably be DeAndre Hopkins for me.
There's a lot at stake here on the Philly side too, because if you do win this and it is a Barkley narrative, and let's say Barkley's MVP, this becomes one of the, I mean, they're going to build a statue to him in front of that stadium. Like, and I'm not being hyperbolic here at all. I mean, I lived in Philly for a while. It's my second city. I love Philadelphia. If he wins them a Super Bowl, is the MVP, they will not only build a statue, but you will start to now see if there is another 2 to 3 years of Saquon Barkley having some great seasons there, where now all of a sudden he goes from what could have been with Saquon Barkley to Saquon Barkley's a Hall of Famer. And he needs this moment and this game to, I think, push that narrative. If he doesn't have a good game, if he falls short, he's just another one of these, well, it was a great running back, was a great season, but you're not going to be in that conversation when people start talking about some of the greats that ever played the position. And he's, in terms of talent, I think one of those guys. But it is so fascinating, and I think that's what makes it such a really intriguing Super Bowl, is you're getting a moment where, if that happens, that is going to be one of these legendary NFL moments where Saquon Barkley was the missing piece. He comes in there, he takes the Eagles over the top, they beat the evil empire of the Chiefs and stop this legendary run, no three-peat. You know, the history dies there with Saquon Barkley and the Eagles, and then they put a monument out there to him and they're retiring jerseys, and that's going to be the narrative and the story that's coming out of that game if they win. That's still an if for Andrew Erickson and myself.
I can already see the newspaper headline in Philadelphia. What is it called? The Philadelphia Inquirer. What is it called?
It's Philadelphia Inquirer.
Okay, yep. Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yep.
Eagles win. Running backs do matter.
Running backs do matter. You're going to have people naming their kids Saquon or even renaming them. That's going to happen in Philadelphia. I'm telling you right now. It is absolutely going to happen there. So again, we're going to have all the coverage here of the Super Bowl. We're going to break down the props next week. Matt Peralta and I are going to talk about Super Bowl. Andrew and I are going to come back again and see if anything has changed in some notions with any other news that might have dropped or things like that. Probably not, but you never know. And that's why you want to stay tuned in. We got a lot of live events happening next week regarding the Super Bowl. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, drop your comments below, and of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget, everybody, to also make sure that you are downloading the BettingPros app so you can bet on the Super Bowl and get the best lines possible, because that's what it's all about. We want to make sure that you're making the best wager with the best investment, with the best knowledge. That's why we're here at BettingPros. That's our job, to help you make good decisions, and hopefully we all enjoy a fun Super Bowl and all a profitable Super Bowl as well. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Andrew Erickson, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.